Hello, one and all. This is Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. This time around, AEW Fight Forever for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, Nintendo Switch, and PC. After a long wait, AEW Fight Forever is finally here. The game that not only is developed by Ukes, which was the studio, the producer, the developer behind the beloved SmackDown games, and then eventually the WWE 2K games and SmackDown vs. Raw games and what have you, but also the creative mind, the force behind the Aki games, the N64, the early PlayStation 1 games like WCW vs. the World, WCW NWO Revenge, WWF WrestleMania 2000, and of course WWF No Mercy. And really, this is a great blend of both of those two franchises, those especially the early 64-bit era franchises, the early SmackDowns, and of course the aforementioned No Mercy and WrestleMania 2000 and NWO WCW Revenge, where you have a system that is rooted in the Aki engine, but has more of a arcade nature, like the SmackDown games, the old Ukes games, where you utilize punches and kicks, hold down the strike button to throw a strong strike, hold down the grapple button to perform a strong grapple. And very similar to the Aki games, there are two reversal buttons, where one reversal button is responsible for blocking and countering strikes, while the other is blocking and countering grapples. Similar to those old games and even like the Fire Pro games. If you try to utilize, say, a heavy grapple attack early in the match when the opponent is pretty healthy, then you more than likely will have your maneuver reversed. And that plays a big role into the momentum meter because, once again, like the Aki games, the momentum meter is the basis of what gets your character, your wrestler, to the point of potentially winning a match. The more success you have in the ring, the more your momentum builds until you have a signature maneuver. Now, unlike those old games where you would lose the signature maneuver after you used them, this game allows you to continuously use signature maneuvers as long as your opponent doesn't knock your momentum down. But to utilize your special maneuver, your finisher, you have to use a taunt, and then you have for a limited time the ability to utilize your finishing maneuver. Now, depending on what wrestler you pick, you may have a variety of finishers from a variety of different angles, and then some may just have one version. Same thing with signatures. Now, when you get into the game, you see the roster, which actually is pretty good in terms of number, but kind of outdated in terms of not only who's currently on the AEW roster, but also how they look. The fact is you will see no stats. And that is very similar to the old games, where you didn't have these ratings. You had just the ability to play with the character, and if you were good enough, you could beat almost anyone with a character. The same thing happens with this game, but they've added something a little bit more, and that is the skills. Each wrestler has certain passive and active skills. For example, one set of skills allows you, if you are, say, playing with Rey Fenix, the chance to do topes and springboard maneuvers. But if you're playing with someone like Powerhouse Hobbs, you have the ability to catch a flying opponent in midair if you hit the right button at the right time. So these active abilities play a big role in how your character plays. But the passive abilities are the ones that are solely circumstantial. One passive ability may allow you to get a momentum boost if you are able to kick out of a pin. Or you may deal an injury better to an opponent in a submission with one of your passive skills. And then there are the stat skills, which are not necessarily stats in number, but stats in effectiveness, because certain wrestlers will have a more powerful finishing maneuver than others due to their stat skill, or as I mentioned earlier, have more finishers or signatures compared to another wrestler. And this plays a major role in not only creating a wrestler, but also Road to Elite. Now, Road to Elite is the big single-player mode where you take a created wrestler or an AEW wrestler through 4 months worth of events to see if you can win championships, make friends, make enemies, that all disappear after that month. For example, my first month in AEW with my created wrestler allowed him to team up with Malachi Black in this odd couple pairing. By the end of the month, we win the tag team championship, but due to a miscommunication and a joke going wrong, my character, with no choice of my own, turns on Malachi, and that's the end of the story. which means we don't have a tag team title run. They never tell you what happens to the tag team title. It just moves on to the next story for yourself. And while that's fine, it's very old school in nature, it feels really outdated for this day and age. Even though, once again, I understand what they're trying to go back to, but it still feels very outdated, especially when you have this branching narrative where you're supposed to continue on from month to month, and it feels like every month is a brand new month from a perspective of where the wrestlers see you and where the announcers see you and where the fans see you. Now, a big thing about Road to Elite when it comes to the created wrestlers is the fact that the only way you can upgrade your wrestler with the stats, the skills, and all that stuff I mentioned earlier is by playing Road to Elite. You cannot give your created wrestler stats and skills during the creation of them. This is both a blessing and a curse because it gives you a reason to play with your wrestler, get to know them, and maybe even improve and change things about them. But this also takes away the fun of being able just to jump into a mode and do whatever you want to do with your created wrestler without having to go through the grind of Road to Elite. And that is complemented by the fact that Road to Elite not only has the matches, but also the choices that you have to pick when you're progressing through the month, like working out, like going sightseeing, like going to eat so you can build up your energy. There are quite a few things you have to handle when it comes to Road to Elite, and it's made even more taxing when you're trying to build up your created wrestler. The only other creation mode there is create an arena, which is solid. It's closer to Fire Pro Wrestling than it is the WWE games, but I will say that easily the weakest point of this game is the creation options when it comes to creating a wrestler. It is bare bones. It is terrible. Creating a woman, you have 4 face templates. Creating a man, you only have 7. You have about 12 to 15 hairstyles. Attires are just ridiculously low in number, with the majority of them just being flag-based attires and shorts. I don't know why they thought this was a good idea, why they didn't put the resources into really making a decent creator wrestler. I'm not saying that it had to be a WWE 2K creator wrestler suite, but it could be something closer to what we saw in WWF No Mercy. I mean, there are actually better attires and pants and tights in WWF No Mercy than it is in this game. Couple that with the fact that things like utilizing the faces or the attires of actual wrestlers to put on your own created wrestler like we used to do back in the day is not even an availability. And then you top that off with the fact there are no community creations. So you can not only not upload your created wrestlers, you cannot download any created wrestlers. So you have to utilize the formulas of the generous creators out there to recreate what they've created. And I wonder if this lack of creation options ties into the fact that they spend so much time building up minigames. Now, minigames, I'll preface this by saying I'm not a big fan of it. Some of them are fun, but they feel like something that was tacked on that wasn't necessary to really make a wrestling game that much more enjoyable. It's not like the Yakuza games, for example, the Like a Dragon games, where you have a plethora of minigames. But those feel like extensions of the world, where you don't feel like something has been cut short because they had to put in this minigame. Whereas with this game, it feels like they did cut some corners in an effort to focus on one thing that wasn't necessarily beneficial for the longevity of this game, like greater creation options. Now, there is the ability to play online. You can play in ranked, casual, or private. Of course, private is pretty much for friends. Ranked, of course, is ranked. And casual allows for you to play with pretty much anyone. I will say that it is hit and miss. Playing online is hit and miss. Connection quality could be iffy depending on who you're playing against. They do not give you a fair warning of the connection quality of your opponent. You just go into the lobby, wait, and hopefully you get a match. When it comes to rank, it depends on what match type you're choosing to play. Now, there are quite a few match types in this game. You have single player, you have tag team, triple threat, fatal 4-way ladder match, casino battle royal, and of course the exploding barbed wire death match. Now, you can play with any of these match types, online or offline. So depending on what match type you want to play with, you will be matched up usually with the person who also is searching for an opponent in that match type. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to get matched up with someone that is similar rank to you. Couple that with the fact that depending on the match that you pick, especially with tag teams online, graphical glitches can be ridiculous. Like your character will get stuck inside the ring and will be unable to help you. Going back to the match types, I will say that I'm a little bit disappointed. I hate the fact that you can't have elimination matches, you can't have 2 out of 3 falls matches. There's no steel cage match. Like, I can deal with blood and guts and stuff like that not being in it, but you can have an exploding barbed wire death match, but not a steel cage match. As I mentioned, technically, the game is still iffy. There can be graphical glitches, especially online. There can be graphical glitches offline. There are some hiccups and hit detection issues that will occur. Thankfully, I haven't had any real game-breaking bugs or anything like that, but it still feels like this game could have used a few weeks, if not months, of ironing out, which is crazy to think, because this game was delayed so many times. There are some issues with the animations and collision detection that could have been worked out if they put some more time into it, which is, as I said, crazy to think, considering how long it took for this game to come out. Overall, AEW Fight Forever is a diamond in the rough. It is a game that, from the onset, is really good. It's really solid. But there needs to be a lot of work. And of course, there needs to be expansion when it comes to the creation system, when it comes to the ability to play online with people and not have to worry about being overmatched or having these really laggy connections. This game definitely feels like the base of something that could be greater if they are able to work on it. The gameplay is there. The fun is there. It just needs those additions and some cleaning up on certain aspects, and it'll be perfect. But it's not there yet. And I would suggest that you wait. Wait to see if it does get fixed. Wait until it does get improved. And then when it does, pick it up. I give it a solid recommendation there. It still needs to be refined. So there you have it. This has been Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. AEW Fight Forever for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Now, if you don't mind, I have just come into the Casino Battle Royal with the Murder Hawk, Lance Archer, and it's time for me to throw bodies and make sure everyone dies and says, "Oh Lordy."